Greetings, I hope everyone had a good Christmas and New Year. I know I've not really uploaded much this last week or two, but no new games are coming out, and I'm in the process of moving, and it's cold, and f*** you, I wanted time off. In all seriousness, I know this is coming a bit late. Some people were doing these lists before December even started, but I figured this could be my sort of 250k subscriber special since we hit that goal in December, and I want to do more edited types of videos. So with that said, this is going to be my top 10 favorite games from last year. Now keep in mind, I am limited to what I played, and I don't put anything on here that I played but didn't devote proper time to. See Titanfall 2. And also, this is probably most important, this is all for fun. This is just my personal opinion and a way to make a little fun video. So yeah, with that said, let's get started. Now, I actually almost went with Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 on my list over Dragon Ball Fusions. Both offer my Dragon Ball fix, and while I do find Xenoverse 2 to be a lot of fun, I find myself going back to Dragon Ball Fusions just a bit more than I do with Xenoverse 2. Fusions is a really addicting RPG that mixes a turn-based rock, paper, scissors style RPG system with elements of Pokemon, with the whole scouting and recruiting your favorite Dragon Ball characters, and the ability to fuse characters to create a wide variety of combinations completely original to this game. I actually find myself losing track of the time when I play Fusions the same way I used to do with Pokemon. It's just a game that's very easy to pick up and play. And watching your team of 5 blast away enemies using moves from both the manga, anime, in addition to some original ones thrown in here or there, is always a fun time. If I had any sort of critique, it would be that the story is just That's sort of expected with Dragon Ball games at this point. At least it wasn't a strict retelling of the Z story, because that just gets old as f***. Still, this is pretty much Dragon Ball mixed with Pokemon. Speaking of which, like many, I also enjoy me some Pokemons. Now, Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon could honestly have just been retreads of previous installations, and it would have probably still been on my end of the year list, if I'm being honest. I mean, it's Pokemon. Cute little monster things battling it out, and turn-based RPGs that are easy to play, but a commitment to master. I'd say everyone already knows how these games play at this point, although this game did add the new variant forms to older Pokemon, in addition to the Mega Evolutions we already saw in X and Y. It's not a complete departure from what we're used to with the series, but I thought it was fun. And Pokemon Sun and Moon did offer a nice twist to the usual formula with the Island Trials. Fighting an alpha Pokemon instead of just tackling a gym leader is a really cool concept, and I hope they keep taking little chances like this in the future. Plus, the island settings and story were also really well done, and gave Sun and Moon a different feel than most of the other Pokemon games in the series. These were just nice changes to the norm. When you get down to it, it's still the same Pokemon we've gotten for like the last, 15, 20 years, but that formula still works to this day, and chances are you probably already own either Pokemon Sun or Pokemon Moon. So, yeah, next game. The game that took nearly 2 whole console generations to finally release appeared at the tail end of 2016. Seriously, this game was a PS3 selling point. It's been that long. Now, I don't know if I can say that The Last Guardian was worth the excruciatingly long wait, but I do think it's a game worth remembering all the same. Despite the very iffy gameplay, especially in regards to actually getting Trico to do what you want him to do, and some odd platforming here and there, I think the overall experience is something worth talking about. You get to explore this very beautifully designed world with a haunting visual aesthetic, excellently crafted music, and some surprisingly touching story moments. There is a genuine bond that sort of naturally progresses between you and Trico as you play the game. They did a really good job of making you care about this weird bird, dog, cat thing. The Last Guardian is probably going to be a very divisive game to a lot of people, and it's easy to see why. If you don't enjoy the gameplay or just find it frustrating, then you might not want to push through and experience those true moments of brilliance that are there. Personally, I'm glad I did, because I was left with a game that stuck with me, which means I got something out of it. Now, let's just hope Team Ico's next game doesn't take another 2 console generations to make. The Bro Trip, nearly 10 years in the making. Final Fantasy 15 is a game that many of us thought would never actually release, but then it did. It's actually pretty damn good. Granted, there are some things about this game that I wish were different. I don't think you should have to watch a movie and an anime to get the most out of your game's story, and the end portion is very weak, but whatever. The overall game is still worth it. I personally love the sort of road trip vibe that the whole game has going for it. I wouldn't have guessed that I would grow to like these in-sync looking motherfuckers, but they grow on you after a while. It really does start to feel like you're hanging out with a few friends on a road trip after a few hours. I really commend Square for making that work somehow. Gameplay is also very energetic and fun once you gain a grasp on the mechanics. Actually reminds me of playing Kingdom Hearts in a lot of ways. And the game is just gorgeous. Like, even looking back at the footage while editing, I'm still impressed by just how damn pretty everything is. Probably one of the best looking games of the year, if nothing else. Now, I don't know if it was worth the 10-year wait, but Final Fantasy 15 is still a very fun romp. Now, Square, can you please go back to working on Kingdom Hearts 3? Pretty please? Firewatch is probably not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Let me just get that right out of the way. If you don't like, quote, walking simulators or games like Gone Home, Firewatch is probably not going to change your mind on the genre. That being said, I adored this game. It was exactly what I wanted, a beautiful looking character study that you can play in an evening and feel like you got your money's worth. Taking place after the Yellowstone fires of 1988, you find yourself in the role of a man named Henry, who takes a job as a forest fire lookout, trying to escape something from his past. He then soon starts developing a relationship with his supervisor Delilah and finding himself at the center of a potential conspiracy. Now, I won't go into any major details, but I personally found Henry's story to be perfectly captivating and found myself sucked into the narrative that's woven throughout the game. And it doesn't hurt that the voice acting for both Henry and Delilah is top tier.
There are, panties?
There are what?
I don't want to say that word again.
Why, 'cause you're 12?
And the game world itself is very well made. I found myself sometimes just admiring the scenery and taking in the atmosphere and losing myself in the story. I think that anytime a game can grab your attention for its entire duration is always a great accomplishment. Firewatch might not be for everyone, but I certainly don't regret a single second of my experience and highly recommend that you take a few hours, sit back, and experience what this game has to offer. Dark Souls 3 is pretty much what you'd expect from a Souls game at this point. It's hard as balls, but worth it for that feeling of fuck yeah after you beat a hard boss. Has a very gorgeously haunting world design with absolutely ugly as character models. It's got a beautiful soundtrack and plenty of lore and story for those that want to immerse themselves more in the Dark Souls experience. Dark Souls 3 is a significant improvement over Dark Souls 2. The world is laid out so much better and is way more concise. You can see how each of the areas connect to the previous one, and it makes sense. It doesn't have that same kind of disconnect that Dark Souls 2 had. Combat is also a bit more fluid. I personally found it much easier to be more offensive and take more risks this time around, although that may be from playing all of the previous games and I'm just better at the games in general. Dark Souls is just a reliably solid series each time a new installment releases. That being said, I do think Bloodborne from last year was way better and marked a more interesting direction for From Software in general. Might sound like I'm underselling this game a little bit considering its spot on my list, but rest assured, I do love Dark Souls 3. I could easily go on about this game for a while, but this is just a list, not really a review of each game. Love Dark Souls 3, but I do hope they lay this particular series to rest for a bit and move on and explore new settings and styles, because this game is a fine trilogy capper for an excellent series of games. probably my second most played multiplayer game of 2016, Dead by Daylight finally lets me live out my fantasy of being in a slasher film. Now, despite a very rough first few months, Dead by Daylight has been tweaked and changed enough to become the game it always had the potential to be. It's very satisfying to play both Survivor and Killer, as they both offer a wide variety of characters and perks to choose from keeping the game from ever really being stale. Me, personally, I prefer to play a Survivor. There's something more enjoyable about trying to outlast an opponent who you have no real way of fighting against. Makes for a tense atmosphere, especially when facing one of the killers like Michael Myers. The maps are pretty great for the most part too. There's usually a wide variety of options for both survivors and killers to take advantage of in each map. Unless you're a survivor on Shelter Woods. Seriously, that map. This game is pretty much a horror fan's wet dream, and I've personally not seen a game like this as well made since Condemned 2. If you want a multiplayer game that offers something a bit different than your standard fare, I really recommend checking out Dead by Daylight. I feel like this game flew under a lot of people's radars, which I can't really blame them for. No one thinks of Digimon the same way they do with Pokemon. They just don't. I certainly didn't know what to expect when I just happened to pick this game up earlier in the year, but, to my surprise, I fell in love with it. The more mature take on Digimon really did catch me off guard, I'll fully admit it. But once I got over that, I found myself a little gem of an RPG that not too many people that I know talk about. Trying to uncover this big conspiracy on why the Digimon world is bleeding into our world, the story behind the Eaters, and all the little side stories, it was just a really fun time. I did not think I'd be so captivated by a Digimon game's story. It wasn't what I was expecting, and it's nice to be genuinely surprised by a game from time to time. Throw in some really fun gameplay, like seriously, I could just farm for XP for hours and try to unlock all the various Digimon. A beautiful art direction, an enjoyable soundtrack, and you've got one of my picks for biggest surprise of the year. I highly recommend this game. If you want a really solid RPG, even if you haven't followed Digimon in years like me, you will not regret this game. One of the biggest surprises of 2016. I highly advise you try it. Putting an Uncharted game on any Game of the Year list is just kind of expected at this point. When it comes to making AAA single-player experiences, hardly anyone can top Naughty Dog, and Uncharted 4: Thief's End is no exception. As far as series finales go, I don't think we could have asked for a stronger ending to Nathan Drake's story than what we got with Uncharted 4. I mean, this game really does have it all. It's got amazing set pieces, a compelling narrative, top-of-the-line voice acting, beautiful game to look at, improves upon the previous games by refining gameplay and adding new elements. I mean, they pretty much did everything you could want with a sequel. The list goes on and on. I can't praise this game enough, and it's already gotten so much praise that there's not really much I can add to the conversation. If you own a PS4, you owe it to yourself to play this game. Actually, go back and play all the Uncharted games because they are all well worth your time. But Naughty Dog once again shows why they are one of the best developers in the business with Uncharted 4. Can't praise this game enough. There's a reason why it has as much praise as it does have. So go out, play this game, you won't regret it. As if this game needed more praise and adulation than it already gets. Overwatch is by far my most played and favorite game of 2016. I'm actually surprised how much I enjoy this game. Even during my vacation when I was writing the script for this video, I found myself still playing Overwatch. It's just that fun of a game. The roster is diverse with enough variety to keep each session fresh and interesting. I love the art style. Makes me think of a multiplayer Pixar game. It's easy to pick up and play, it's fun with friends, the maps, at least in my opinion, are all well made and offer plenty of different unique ways to approach depending on whether you're attacking or defending. Let's go, Widowmaker. This game has just about everything I could want in a multiplayer shooter, and I know a lot of people probably have multiplayer games on their top lists like Battlefield 1 or Titanfall 2, and those are fine and dandy. But for me, Overwatch is the game that I kept coming back to. I get some people might be miffed at the loot crates and other little things, but I just don't care. I love this game. It was my most played game of 2016, and it's already my most played game of 2017, and I imagine that will continue for some time. There's really nothing I can add that hasn't already been said about Overwatch. So with that in mind, Overwatch is my 2016 Game of the Year.